Welcome to the Unilever Future Leaders League 2019 Pre-Hackathon Workshop. Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming here today. So before we begin the workshop proper, I'd like to make one small request for all of you who haven't already done so. Please whip out your phones and scan the QR code over here, and then you're going to get an agenda for today's event. So if you haven't already, just take a minute to scan the QR code over here to get the welcome sheet. And if it doesn't work, we also have a link at the bottom. Don't worry, it's not so serious. Okay, so if you have done so, let's begin with the event for today. I am Namita, and I am a Unilever Future Leaders Program person. So I'm in marketing for UFLP, and right now I'm actually an assistant brand manager for the health and well-being team here in Unilever. If you have any questions about the UFLP program or marketing, you can find me later. But for now, I'm going to be your MC for this afternoon and the pre-hackathon workshop. So if you have scanned the QR code, you'll be able to see the agenda for today. We have a really exciting lineup for all of you. It's going to be exciting, insightful. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to get to meet one another and meet us here in Unilever. So this is the agenda for today. We're going to start off with a briefing for the hackathon, and we're going to run you through the program and what's going to happen up till the hackathon day itself. Then we're going to have a few speakers to speak to us about the USLP and the initiatives that are happening here in Unilever, following which we're going to have a really insightful panel discussion with members from Unilever, and then an ideation exercise for all of you to get to know one another better and come up with some great ideas before ending off with a networking session and a sign-up for our hackathon. Okay, so for now, I'm going to actually invite Ms. Sean on stage. So Sean is going to run us through the hackathon program and what's going to happen from now till the hackathon day itself. Sean, please.
Thank you, Namita. Isn't our MC so beautiful today? She's so nice. So hi, everyone. My name is Sean, and it's pronounced as Sean. I know a lot of people have a different opinion of how you spell it and how you say it. But yes, so I am a UFLP as well. I'm actually in supply chain. I currently actually focus on the flavors management for procurement in the global context. So you can look for me if you're interested in supply chain. But very fun fact, I'm actually a biology major from NTU. So it was a very big jump. You can always ask me why I chose this route later on. Don't be shy. So a little bit about the timeline. So today, it's the 6th of September at the Pre-Hackathon Workshop. So we're almost halfway there, and the submission for the application deadline is on the 12th of September. I just want to remind everyone, you have 6 more days, so good luck. And if you're lucky enough, on the 16th of September is when we will release the top 20 teams, and you will then join us at the hackathon on the 19th and 20th of September. And that's when I will talk about the attractive prizes now. So if you win the UFLL competition, the champions will actually get a fully paid expense trip to London. Woo, who's never been to Europe before? Me. Yeah. So you'll also get to represent Singapore in the Global Challenge and have a lot of fun. Not only that, for the graduating students, you will also get the direct DC placement for, fast track to the DC of UFLP. And if not, you're not graduating yet, don't worry, you still have a chance because you'll go through the direct placement of the ULIP, which is a 3-month summer program, internship, very, very competitive, very, very insightful. I think a lot of you will enjoy it as well. So the second place winners, each representative will get 1 iPad, which is amazing, right? And then also you get a fast-track entry to Unilever's Gen X panel interview. That is the 6 months program for the internship. If not, you can also get the fast-track entry to the ULIP Discovery Center, which is for the non-graduating students. And the third place, you will then get 3 Google Homes. Like, come on, that's like IoT, right? Like, seriously, it's super fun to play with. And you will also get a fast-track entry to the Unilever Gen X panel interview, and those who obviously are not graduating yet will also get the ULIP DC. So very attractive prizes, and I hope that you guys will at least get one thing to walk away with. Right, so some highlights about the hackathon itself. Not only will you get to go and learn more about what Unilever sustainability is, what's the plan, what's the future, and how you guys will be our future leaders as well. You will also be mentored, so there's a lot of opportunities for you to be mentored by our managers who are already working here in Unilever. You also get mentored by startup founders, so you also learn a lot more about having to develop technology and also learn about how to use UX, so it's user experience mentors. So they will teach you as well how to design things, how to be more design focused, and etc. And not only that, you get to see our lovely 4 Acres venue, so that's at the One North, and also get an abundance of ice cream. So it is free flow, I'm just letting you know. Eyeball those when you're there. And also, at the last day, you will also have a party. So, nope, obviously everyone likes a party, right? And plus, it's free booze. So, just letting you know. All right, so the application question is, how can Unilever further accelerate the USLP agenda in today's digital world? So clearly, there are 2 aspects to it, USLP and something digital. So please keep in mind a lot of questions for the panel discussion later if you have any questions directed to any of our managers. And the deadline, as mentioned, is up September 12th, 23:59. Just like all of your turnitin.com things, okay? Yeah. So those who have not seen the Pre-Hackathon workshop reads, there is this QR code, you can scan it. There are a lot of business cases there to help you understand what are the current initiatives that Unilever is already taking. And also, you also have a lot of pre-reads about what are the real goals of USLP. And this will be a great opportunity for you to leverage this information and ask really, really good questions later. Because this is the first time we're actually having a workshop. So this is actually something really, really beneficial for everyone here. So you can actually ask a lot of questions that are very relevant that normally a lot of other students of your predecessors never had the opportunity to. All right, so the hackathon application itself. You can either apply in teams of 3 or as an individual. Or like today, you can actually mingle, make friends, and then form your own team of 3, right? So don't be shy and, mingle, right? So on the website itself, when you upload your deck, I think a lot of you are having questions about what do you submit. You have a 10-slide pitch deck in a PDF form, and this is not including the cover page and also the appendix. But that being said, don't go crazy, okay? I don't really want to see an appendix of like 20 over other things involved, so be reasonable, yeah? And then in our application, we also said that there was submission of other formats. So you can actually put in a URL to a Google Drive or like a Dropbox, and then inside you can have that format. What type of format are you probably thinking of? I don't know, anything, be creative, up to you, right? So apps, I don't know, anything that comes to your mind. So what is the evaluation criteria? And I know a lot of people are probably going to ask this over and over again. So first things first is about problem identification. How can you identify a problem, and how do you answer this problem? That is something that is very, very crucial when you perform your pitch. Secondly, it's about scalability and your effectiveness. So not only providing a solution, but how effective will the solution be? How will the people receive it? That kind of things you need to think about when you answer your question. And there's about creativity, so something that is out of the box, something innovative, something that's not done before, or maybe in a different industry that you can apply it to this industry, that kind of thing. And the last thing is also about the Unilever fit, whether it is sustainable, right? And whether it's in line with any of our brands or with our purpose, that's the thing that we're looking for. So with this slide, I'm going to conclude a little bit about the hackathon. I hope you guys are looking forward to it, and I'll pass the time back to Ms. Namita. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Ms. Sean. So I think all of us here have a very good understanding of how to apply for the hackathon now, what is the hackathon about, and we know all the exact steps to go into it. So we're really excited, but now we want to find out more about the USLP and Unilever itself. So for that, we actually have a few established speakers here with us today who are working in Unilever who can give us a better understanding of the USLP. First up, we have Ms. Eleora Tan, who is the Assistant Sustainable Business and Communication Manager. So Eleora has a lot of experience with the USLP, and she'll be giving us a speech to help us understand better what are the components of the USLP and how does Unilever align ourselves with our goal. Ms. Eleora, please.
Okay. Thanks everyone for having me here today. So I'm very happy to be sharing with you about Unilever, our Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, and what sustainability means to Unilever. So a very quick introduction to Unilever. We are a global company of turnover of 51 billion euros, and we make some of the world's most famous brands, as you can see here on screen. And every day, 2.5 billion people use our products, and we are consistently recognized as the leader in sustainable business. So our journey in sustainability began way back over 100 years ago in 1885, when our British founder, William Lever, started to sell Sunlight soap. So he was a social entrepreneur who saw how selling a pack of soap at a time when cholera were actually widespread in Britain's Victorian slum could improve the lives of millions of people and also grow his business. So through the Sunlight soap, he actually brought hygiene to millions of people who didn't know about the existence of germs or why hygiene was important. He did it by setting an inspirational purpose for his company, which is to make cleanliness commonplace. So fast forward to today, the world now faces new and bigger challenges. 1 in 10 adults is obese, while 1 billion people go hungry. So many people are across the world, they are also without access to safe drinking water or proper sanitation. And at Unilever, we believe that businesses and brands have to be part of that solution. So in order to stay relevant to this new world that I've just briefly described, we have introduced a simple but clear purpose, which is to make sustainable living commonplace. So just as William Lever believed that the only way to tackle poor hygiene back then was to make cleanliness desirable and aspirational, we at Unilever believe that in order to achieve that better future we all want, we have to make sustainable living the new social norm. And how do we do that? How do we live out our purpose? Is through this, our USLP. So it's launched in 2010. This is our blueprint for sustainable growth. And it has 3 big goals, 9 pillars, and we have many targets spanning across the USLP. For more of the information on our targets, please go onto our website. And for the purpose of today's sharing, I'm just going to provide a very quick overview of our progress and also provide an example each goal to show you how we are using technology to help us achieve the USLP. So for our very first one, improving health and well-being for more than 1 billion people. So right now, we have actually already achieved our target, reaching 1.24 billion people through our programs on hand washing, sanitation, self-esteem, or skin healing. So I'm going to show you a video next. And this video is about an initiative called Mobile Movies, which we piloted with a company called Next Billion, which is just based in Level 3. And this is just one example on how we are reaching our rural consumers. So now let's watch the video. Sound.
Sustainability and social impact is at the heart of everything that we do. We've always been very proud of our rural activation programs. And while we've historically done great, we're going with the same tried and tested models we did 10 years ago, but they're simply not resonating with consumers as they used to. Today they have mobile, television, and they're much more media exposed. They just don't trust the brand promoter from the city, and that's where Next Billion came in.
Next Billion is a for-profit social enterprise, and we're dedicated to helping companies understand and engage emerging consumers around the world. Our venture, Mobile Movies, creates pop-up movie theaters in rural communities around the world in order to bring people together with entertainment and then use the gathering to show educational videos and also introduce positive products and behaviors to rural communities.
We've picked rural entrepreneurs, women from within those rural communities, and we've called them into a centralized workshop, trained them about our product features and the benefits of washing your hands and brushing your teeth. And we've also handed over to them media content and small pocket projectors, which they just carry around with them in their bag, as well as giving them some samples, soaps and toothpaste. They've gone back to their communities and they've engaged within their own villages. Suddenly we found our messages had a lot more credibility and authenticity with the same consumers. We've tested it out in 2 parts of Bangladesh, one in Rangpur, which is in the north, one in Borishal, which is in the south, from which we could clearly see the consumers' brand awareness of Pepsodent, brand awareness of Lifebuoy, their habit of washing their hands on 5 occasions in the day, have all significantly increased after we did the activity as compared to before we did the activity in the same villages. So that only bodes great news for our brands.
The Foundry has been an excellent opportunity.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop you right there. So that is just one example of how we are reaching our rural consumers. So moving to our next big goal, which is to halve our environmental impact, we track this across greenhouse gases, water, waste, and our sourcing. So for areas that we have actually done well is in achieving the targets that we have set for ourselves within our operations. So for example, in our factories, we send 0 waste to landfill and also targets for our offices. And for areas that we have a lot more room to improve on is actually on consumer use. And what I mean by consumer use is actually the amount of water you use when you do your laundry or wash your dishes, and the amount of, not the amount of water, but what you do with the bottle of shampoo when it runs out. So we also recognize that this is not within our direct control, but that is not stopping us to continue to innovate and find new ways to overcome this challenge. So the next video that I'm going to show you is about reuse and refills. So this is one example on how we are innovating to cut plastic waste. So our last big goal, which is to enhance livelihoods for millions. So today we have reached nearly 800,000 smallholder farmers and nearly 1.8 small-scale retailers to either improve their agriculture practices or to increase their incomes. So we are actually very proud of the work that we do in this space, especially in this part of the world. So I want to show you an example from Philippines. So in Philippines, 90% of the landscape is made up of sari-sari stores, or what you would call a mama shop in Singapore. So they are small and individually owned. So unlike your cold storage or your FairPrice. So in Philippines, the program is called Kabisig, and through that program, we actually work directly with the store owners to improve their business skills. So whether it is stock management, customer service, or cash management. So we help them improve their business skills, which in turn will improve their business and also improve Unilever's business. So the next video that I'm actually going to show you will highlight the impact that we have made to the lives of these store owners. And right now, as we speak, we are already fully digitizing the training modules so that we can help even more people. Let's watch the video.
Ang daming nasalanta ng bagyo. Natakot ako na baka hindi na kami makabangon. Pero kung hindi ako magpapakatatag, sino?
Natapos ang kontrata ko sa Riyadh, nagtayo ako ng tindahan para mapalago ang naipon ko. Kinabahan ako. Kaya ko ba talaga suportahan ang pamilya ko? Sabi ko sa sarili ko, basta may pagkukusang umangat, kakayanin.
Kayod kabayo na ako, kapos pa rin. Nagsisipag, nagtitipid, nag-iipon. Kahit anong gawin ko, hindi pa rin sapat. Buti na lang, may natuklasan akong makakatulong sa tindahan.
Sa hirap ng buhay, minsan natatakot. Walang kumpiyansa, walang lakas loob.
Tayong mga Pilipino, itaas ang noo. Pagpakitang gilas, malayo ang mararating mo. At kabising mo, sa iyong tagumpay, kabising mo, para umangat ka sa buhay. Kabising mo. Ilabas ating talino, angat sa negosyo. Ilabas ang tapang, bibigyan ka ng respeto. At kabising mo, sa iyong tagumpay, kabising mo, para umangat ka sa buhay. Kabising mo.
tulong ng kabisig, di lang kami nakabangon. Umasenso pa.
Dahil doon, kayang-kaya kong alagaan ang pamilya ko.
Sa wakas, nakaahon din kami.
Kami kabisig mo. Kami kabisig mo.
So with showing the 3 videos, I can say that technology or innovation definitely has a role to play in helping us achieve our USLP. And whether it's increasing our reach through the mobile movies initiative you saw earlier, or changing consumers' behavior through refills, or scaling our impact through digitalization. So last slide that I want to share with you is actually very important. So in order to capture how sustainability or the USLP contributes to our business success, we have actually introduced this simple 4-point framework. So we do not have a separate business strategy and the USLP. The USLP is our strategy. It is actually helping us to drive growth, future-proof our business, save money, and earn trust. So this is not just about doing good, but it's also about doing well. So our CEO, just to share a sentence, Alan Job nicely summarizes it in one sentence. It says, "It is not about putting purpose ahead of profits, but it is purpose that drives profits." So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Laura. I think that was really inspiring, and I personally felt like I learned a lot from listening to that about what the USLP goals are and how Unilever really tries our best to integrate everything we do with the USLP. So now that we've got a better understanding on the broad view of USLP, I think it'll be really great if you can hear from someone whose brand is specifically working in line with USLP. So up next, we have Mr. Jonathan Wong, who is a global brand manager at Lifebuoy. I'm sure all of us have heard and maybe even used the brand Lifebuoy, so we can hear how his brand is actually working with the USLP to do things that are aligned with our goal. So, Jonathan, please.
Just press the next one. All right. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I think I remember in year 2, I was just telling someone just now, I remember being in year 2 and wanting to join FLL. Then I decided I was too lazy, So kudos to you guys for being here. I'm just going to spend a bit of time just talking through what we do as a brand, Lifebuoy, what we do on our social mission. And I hope you get a sense for how, I think what Laura was talking a little bit earlier, that this isn't about CSR. Unilever doesn't do CSR. Our purpose is our business. And I don't think any other brand in Unilever epitomizes it as much as Lifebuoy does. So I hope you get a sense of that as I talk you through the brand. Okay, next one. So Lifebuoy actually has a really, really long history, stretching all the way back to 1894. So that's the founder of Unilever there. Lifebuoy was one of the first products that Unilever as a company rolled out. And this is what he said at that time. That the purpose of Lifebuoy, and this is like 100 over years ago, so it was way ahead of his time, to make cleanliness commonplace, to lessen work for women, to foster health and contribute to personal attractiveness, that life may be more enjoyable and rewarding for the people who use our products. And I think today you'll see that the USLP and the way it's articulated has changed a lot, but fundamentally it's still about this, right? So we wrote out Lifebuoy many, many years ago with the purpose of saving lives in a time in England where cholera was just really prevalent. Later on, in the years that passed, it was repositioned as a health soap, so almost the kind of the version of Lifebuoy that you see today. And there was an emphasis, you can even see on our pack there, cleaning hands helping to gut health. And that was the message that was actually on our packaging. There's a similar message even today. So even way back then, your Lifebuoy, as it does today, stands for helping people stay one step ahead of infections. So from the beginning, you'll see that our social mission was really entrenched in the brand. you'll see this chart here. It's actually something that the brand used back in those days in their hand washing education programs for kids to kind of mark off and make sure they wash their hands a certain number of times a day. And we actually use something very similar even today. So when we go to a lot of our school programs and we teach hand washing to kids, especially in places like India, a big part of driving behavior change is getting them to do it as part of their daily habits, right? And things like that actually help. So way back then, we were already doing that. And during World War II, Lifebuoy actually provided free emergency washing services at a time when London was being bombed and all of that. So you can see, stretching for way all the way back to our founding, that our social mission was really core and is really core to what the brand stands for. So today we are present in more than 55 countries around the world. But I'm just going to talk to you through how even today you'll see us bringing to life this purpose of helping moms stay one step ahead of infections. So today, diarrhea, and this is something that I didn't even know when I started working on Lifebuoy. Today, diarrhea and pneumonia are the top 2 killers of children. And it can actually be prevented by one of the most simple interventions that you can think of. Things that we people, sitting here in Singapore in a really developed country, take for granted. Pneumonia and diarrhea, one of the most effective prevention methods for it is simply washing your hands with soap. So the numbers are staggering. 1.2 million children under the age of 5 die every year from things like pneumonia and diarrhea, which I was sharing earlier, can very easily be prevented. That's one child every 30 seconds, which is just insane to think that today these kind of childhood deaths are still happening at such a scale is mind-boggling. And it's even more mind-boggling when you think about the fact that there's such a simple intervention, right? Hand washing with soap can reduce the incidence of diarrhea by 45%, pneumonia by 23%. The numbers are crazy. So, and this hygiene contributes to our goal of helping people achieve better hygiene. Actually contributes to one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is ending preventable deaths in children under the age of 5 by 2030. And this is something that Lifebuoy actually actively advocated the United Nations to actually include in our their Sustainable Development Goals. So, a little bit more about why hand washing is so important. So it's such a cost-effective method, obviously. It's, a bar of soap doesn't really cost that much. But the impact of it is mind-boggling. 17%, 17% of people, and not this number here, but 17% of people actually don't wash their hands after using the toilet. And when we actually brought this hand washing program to them, we saw significant increases in the number of people that actually wash their hands. So as much as 25% of people were washing their hands more regularly than they were before. There were 25% drops in the number of incidences of diarrhea. There were 14% drops in the number of people who were missing school because of illnesses like diarrhea and pneumonia. So you can really, just tell the impact of something as simple as this. So we kind of live out our social mission in 2 ways. One of it is our school program, where we actually go to schools like I was telling you about, and we actually teach kids hand washing. And we also do something pretty interesting, which is an outreach program which we use to target at mothers to teach them the importance of hand washing. So I'll talk you through the second program, which actually leverages technology in quite an interesting way, and I think in a way that maybe we don't expect today living in Singapore, but it's actually driving huge results. So in rural India, moms are the primary caregivers in their family, just like in most places in the world. And they actually lack access to mass media. So they don't really have TVs in their homes. They obviously don't have the internet. And they have very limited exposure to the outside world. But interestingly enough, mobile phone penetration, not smartphone penetration, but mobile phone penetration, so people using things like, those feature phones, those analog phones that, we used to use like 10 years ago, those are actually really prevalent in these rural parts of India. And many times that's their only connection to the outside world, right? The issues here in terms of driving behavioral change, like they don't really, there's limited literacy, they have obviously limited sources of information because they're not really connected to the outside world. So yeah, I was telling you earlier, 52% of rural India actually, they don't even have a TV in their home. So the question is, how do we reach them? So knowing that mobile penetration is so high, as much as 60%, and that being the only form of communication most people have with the outside world, Lifebuoy actually created a program called Mobile Doctony. So it's a mobile-based content delivery system. So it works in quite an interesting way. Actually, maybe I'll just jump to that slide. So what happens is that a user actually calls using one of their feature phones. They give a call and they actually hang up. What happens then is the system actually gives them a call back. And then in that call, we actually profile that person. So if it's a mom, we ask her, do you have kids? How old are you? How old are your kids? So we kind of understand who she is. We understand the profile of her children. And then by extension, we understand what her needs are, right? What happens then is throughout the weeks that follow, it's an 8-week program in some cases, it's a 16-week program in some cases. Over the period of the program, we actually deliver calls to them on a regular basis that delivers them that health content that they need. So it can be, and many times it's not even something to do with hand washing. So it's basically basic childcare kind of tips, advice, parenting advice. Obviously, part of it then also is hand washing. But basically, we give them like a whole suite of information that helps them in terms of parenting. So for moms, it's very generic health information like I talked about earlier. For new moms, it's telling them about what's effective in terms of postnatal care. And then, of course, we also work in hand washing. But basically, it's customized content that is delivered in a really cost-efficient way because these moms are receiving these calls over the phone. They're not paying for it at all, right? And it's on a medium that they have access to and that they are spending a lot of their time on. And actually, and it's really localized. I think the really cool part of this is that it's really localized. So a lot of the content actually speaks to very local health myths that I think you've all heard your mom like tell you, oh, don't do this, don't do that for that reason. And you kind of like, that doesn't make sense. But, and I mean, everywhere moms have that kind of myths, right? And it's especially prevalent in places like rural India. So a lot of the content specifically addresses many of these prevalent myths. So the results are really quite interesting among just moms in general. There is an increase in terms of incidents of hand washing with soap, at least one occasion a day. And many times they are the ones that are cooking, right? So the fact that they are washing their hands more obviously makes a big difference. They are teaching their kids to wash their hands more. In new moms, they are washing their hands even more times. So we've done like a lot of studies with scientific journals, and there's been lots of documentation in terms of the impact that programs like this and other similar programs are driving. So I hope you see, that just kind of gives you a sense of what we're doing. It really, I think, epitomizes how this is huge driver for the business also, because in many countries, they are not even using like 5 bars of soap a week. A year, not a week. They're not even using 5 bars of soap a year. And if you're washing your hands regularly, you should be using as much as 20 bars of soap, right? So you can imagine just the increase in incidence of washing hands helps drive huge consumption of our brand and driving growth for the business also. But in a way that really speaks to the needs and the challenges that our consumers face. So yeah, hope that gives you a good idea.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I really feel like all the brands in Unilever, we really try our best to incorporate these kind of initiatives to align ourselves with the USLP goal. So now that we've heard a macro view on USLP, as well as an example of a brand that does stuff, I'm sure all of you will be having a lot of questions in your mind, and you really want to find out more, pick the brains of the people over here. So we've set up a panel discussion for all of you, and in the panel discussion, we'll have Elora, Jonathan, as well as Samantha, who will be telling us more about the USLP, as well as what they are doing, and just general questions to help us get a better understanding. And to moderate the panels, we have 2 of our UFLPs, Sean, that you met earlier, and Valerie. So they will be the ones asking questions, and they'll be the ones facilitating this panel discussion. So without further ado, can we invite all the members of this discussion on stage to facilitate? Thank you.
Sorry, can we also have the next slide? So today's, we're going to use Mentimeter as the application to submit your questions. So when you submit your questions, please also write in the name of the person that you are directing the question to, followed by the actual question. So next, where's the clicker? Yeah, that's the Mentimeter and that's the code. So please sign in.
Yeah, so hi guys. Actually, let me introduce myself first because I realized I haven't spoken yet. So I'm Valerie. I am a UFLP in supply chain, specifically under procurement rigid packaging. So actually now I'm working on the digitalization project, so it's pretty apt to this hackathon, I guess, in some sense. Okay, so enough about me. I believe you've met Eliora as well as Jonathan. So we also have Samantha over here. So let's start with an introduction from Samantha. So maybe you can talk more about what you do in Unilever and how your team has helped drive the USLP agenda.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Samantha. I'm currently the Assistant Procurement Manager looking at post-consumer resins. For those of you who don't know what post-consumer resin means, it means basically recycled plastics. And my role in Unilever is to help us achieve our commitment of having at least 20% recycled packaging by 2025. So why recycled packaging is important? As I'm sure you can know, plastics is everywhere around us. And as much as sometimes we try to reduce our plastic packaging unfortunately is inevitable. But what I do in my role, we look to drive circular economy. How can we encourage our brands to use recycled plastics? How do we help them design their products so it's easily recyclable? So that's pretty much what I do here.
Okay, so we have our Mentimeter live now, so you guys can come and enter it through the code over there and just pop in any questions. So to get the ball rolling, maybe I'll ask, Eliora a question.
First.
Okay. Yeah, so as we all know, Unilever is present in a lot of markets. So a question we have over here is what are the different challenges when we want to drive the USLP agenda in, let's say, a developing market versus a developed market? What are the differences you see?
Okay, so I think the main difference between a developed and a developing market is the infrastructure. So, for example, just in Singapore alone, just a very clear example because you'll be very familiar with Singapore, just on recycling, or just on the topic of plastics, we actually have a very comprehensive, infrastructure in place, an ecosystem to make sure you recycle stuff and then it gets burned in they comply with the healthy standards and all the gas emissions before they actually send to landfill. And even with the landfill, they regenerate. So it has a comprehensive plan to it. But if you take a look at another developing country, for example, Philippines, Thailand, or Indonesia, they don't have that recycling infrastructure in place. So when the governments itself, they have not implemented that infrastructure, it can actually be very hard for companies and brands to want to recycle stuff, because then that would be a roadblock for us. Yeah, so I think that's one big challenge.
Yeah, so guys, I think there's a small typo. So it's not mentimeter.com, it's menti.com. So MENTI. Yeah. Okay, so we have a few questions coming in. So I have one question for Jonathan. So Jonathan, can you share about the most memorable project you worked on?
Okay, so it will definitely have to be our launch in the US. So actually going back to what Eliora was saying about what the differences are between working on USLP in a developing versus a non-developing market. So we were going to launch in the US, and for us going to the US, our proposition was obviously on germ protection. That's what Lifebuoy stands for as a brand. But if you go to a market like the US where hand washing is super prevalent, people you just wash your hands, right? And nobody really see, it's not revolutionary. People see soap as kind of all the same thing. The question has always been the question was how we would differentiate ourselves from other soap brands in the market, in such a cluttered market like the US. So we actually had a very different approach in terms of how we launched in the US. We actually led with our social mission. So versus talking about germ protection, we talked about exactly this, what I shared about earlier, our social mission. We talked about how we were changing the lives we have reached over 400 million people around the world with our hand washing programs, how we were driving change, and the message was squarely on that we were making such a big change around the world, and by buying Lifebuoy, you are also indirectly kind of contributing to that cause, and for every pack that you buy, we will actually donate more that we will put into our hand washing programs. So it's a very interesting spin, I think, because the consumer needs there are so different. People are so really wanting to kind of get involved in social causes. We felt that was the best way to do it. And I think for me, working on a marketing campaign like that and knowing that the sales that I would drive through all the communications that I create would actually make a really tangible impact in the lives of people, because we will be able to reach more people now with the programs, was something that was really, really meaningful for me.
Yeah, that's really exciting to hear. So we have a question for Samantha. Okay, so I believe, Iliora, you shared the video with the refilling station. So Sam, this question is for you. Is the refilling station a viable solution to permanently reduce plastic packaging?
So I think refill stations have recently picked off, and we see it working very effectively in very densely populated regions, say in cities like Manila and Indonesia, like Jakarta. So I definitely think it's a great way to get people to think about reducing their single-use packaging and doing refills instead. But at the same time, we also need to think about communities that are not as easily accessed. For example, villages in very rural parts of the Philippines, where it might not make sense at their scale to invest in very big refilleries because the amount that they use is not a lot. So one of the challenges that we face in Unilever is the use of sachets. We do know sachets are polluting the market, and we are looking at innovation such as fully recyclable sachets. I think that's one of the biggest problems we have to tackle, because it's very difficult to also do transport of refilleries to these local regions that are very even hard to access by road. So yes, I do think in the very developed countries, refills are a great way to address the plastic issue, but there's still a lot more work that needs to be done in developing and more rural regions.
Yeah, so thanks, Sam. Yeah, plastic is something that's quite important to us. And yeah, we do see a challenge in developing markets, especially with the area of sachets. So we have another question. Okay, so this one, I think it's open for all. So how does Unilever balance our profits with sustainability?
So like I shared, actually, it is purpose that drives profit. So when we looked at, doing sales in a meaningful way, and you put emotional relevance, right up front, and that's how you actually engage with today's consumers, because their attention span is so short that the only way to engage them is actually if you can be authentic and true to yourself. So when we communicate, we also not just, what we call do the talk, but we also walk the talk. So we have programs. So we don't just say, like Lifebuoy example, we don't just say that, Lifebuoy saves lives, but we actually implement programs on ground to do this. So I would say that because through all of this, it actually helps us to drive like frequency of use, drives market penetration. So I think it's a cycle that we see. So it's not more about balancing, but it's how we make sure that it works, integrate, like we embed it together. Yeah. Anything to add?
Maybe I'll also add on. So in the packaging field, people always say, sustainability can be more expensive in procuring organic products. Yes, we are paying for the true cost of the product. But in packaging, we also look at being innovative, redesigning our packaging. How can we reduce our waste? So by ensuring that we put sustainability as the forefront of our purpose, we actually start rethinking of how we can redesign our products so that we, for example, use a lot less plastic. So one of the innovations that we have done, actually, if you're not familiar, most traditional bottles have pumps. And it's very unrecyclable because inside there's a metal reel. So the whole product is a multi-assembly, it cannot be recycled. But when we go to the brands and say, hey, can you rethink your packaging? We need to be more sustainable. If we want our consumers to be able to recycle our product, we need to make sure that it's recycled. So the brands take that back. They rethink about designing their packaging and their pumps into just one type of plastic. It saves costs. It makes the product more recyclable. It is sustainable. And it also drives growth on our profits.
Yeah, so thank you. So yeah, I think for Unilever, we really try to incorporate USLP into our business. We don't run it separately as two different strategies, but it's really fully incorporated. So I think we have quite a lot of questions. So let's go for, okay, this one's open for all again. So how does Unilever measure our impact on the environment?
So when I think people think about sustainability, the main impact of assessment we think is plastic, but that's not necessarily the case. We think about it very holistically. We think about the impact on our carbon offset. We think about the amount of water waste that we are putting out. How do we reduce our use of water? So we don't just look at plastics. We look at a much larger scale of measure so that we have a more holistic understanding of what is Unilever's true impact. Maybe Ilari want to add on the numbers.
And also plastic is one because that's how we source, the sourcing and the waste. But there's also other areas such as greenhouse gases, carbon, and waste and water. So when we track it our footprint globally. So and every part of when we launch a product, so I'm sure Jonathan can share more. We look at it as a product life cycle. So from the time it's being manufactured to the time it's being transported for delivery, so all of that actually takes into account. So it's not just the material itself, but throughout the process, what are the carbon that's being emitted, and right through to consumer use and disposal. So how much water you use when you do your laundry or do your dishes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually like to add on that, or rather, I have a question for myself. So I'm just thinking, let's say for health and well-being, how do we measure that? Maybe this is more for Jonathan. Yeah.
So I think there are very quantifiable measures. I'll just speak about Lifebuoy because that's probably what I'm most familiar with. So there have been lots and lots of studies published in scientific journals by the UN, etc., on the impact that what we do as a brand, the impact it's making. So we're seeing, I think I shared some numbers earlier, that there are significant increases decreases as much as 25% in the incidence of pneumonia, in the incidence of diarrhea. So those are very, very tangible measures that we see. 14% decreases, again, in the number of people who are missing school because of sicknesses in places where we're running these health programs. So I think for us, there are very sharp numbers that we can put behind our programs. And I think for us as a company also, just building on the points earlier that on how we kind of integrate all this into our business, I think one really great example that I just thought of actually was, so recently there's been a water crisis in South Africa, right? So there's one of the first countries, they say that's going to literally run out of water that's actually usable. So we've actually launched one of our products in South Africa that requires 50% less water to use. So people are able to still stay clean, stay healthy amidst obviously such a water crisis. So I think those and all those numbers are, I think, ways in which we are able to quantify the impact that we're making.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. So I actually have a question for Valerie. It's basically, the question says, from this hackathon, do you expect mainly digital solutions or also practical solutions? And which is the target? Is it only applicable for poor countries, or are we speaking in a global context?
Yeah, so I don't see digital as something being separate from practical. If you're offering a solution, it has to be both. I mean, if you're offering a digital solution, if it's not practical, then, what is the impact that you're going to make? So it definitely has to be a balance of both. And in today's digital world, the whole idea is how can we further drive our USLP agenda with all these new technologies popping up, with so much data out there, how can we leverage that? And I think we're asking about whether it's just poor countries or global. In our application question, we are leaving it up to you. So remember, we have one part on problem identification. So you can go out there, identify a problem that you think Unilever will be keen to solve. So this, it can be quite a whole range of problems. Like, for example, DAF, we are talking about women feeling insecure. This kind of things is not just limited to developing or developed markets. So really, this is up to you to identify. Yeah. Okay, so I think this one is for all. Under the USLP agenda, there are quite a lot of goals. Maybe one of you guys can say which is the one that resonates most with you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. I think the one on creating sustainable livelihoods for the people who power our brands, grow our businesses. I think that's something that's quite cool actually. So I think that was one of the first things I heard about Unilever. I was at one of the recruitment talks. So there was this person who was sharing about the way we source vanilla for our Magnum ice cream. So that was actually a really cool story. So apparently 70% or so, correct me if I'm wrong, of our vanilla actually comes from Madagascar. And it actually comes from just, obviously it's grown and the people who grow it, the farmers who grow it, obviously aren't the most well-to-do, right? So as one of our ways to kind of live out this goal of creating sustainable livelihoods, we actually paid for the farmers who are actually growing these vanilla beans, we actually paid for their health insurance. Now, obviously, later on, they found out that was actually causing some issues because the people in the village who weren't farmers, who weren't getting the health insurance, were actually kind of like, oh, why are we not getting the health insurance, right? So what Unilever ended up doing was giving health insurance to the entire village. So I think that's one of the coolest stories that I heard. I think that was like one of the recruitment talks, and I was like, wow, for me, really kind of epitomizes how end-to-end, not just in terms of plastics, but all the way up front in the supply chain, we really do live out these and try to work out these goals.
Okay, so for me, it's also, I think, very similar on that line. It's on livelihoods. So I think more particularly on smallholders, farmers. So I think because I read the story somewhere, it says that, for a smallholder farmer, what is important and the principle or like something that connects all three is their livelihoods, families and income. No, not livelihoods. Income, families, and land. So that's the three most important things to a smallholder farmer. So it all comes together. So the work that we do actually when we go out there and make sure that, they improve their agricultural practices so that they can grow the crops, for future generations. So when we protect that land, we actually also, along the way, we protect their families and their income. So with that, I think that's, for me, a very powerful thinking. Yeah.
For me, I would say reducing environmental impact by half, because I think everyone knows that there's a very pressing very pressing issue on climate change. The world's resources are getting scarcer. We have deserts drying up, and really Unilever's commitment to reducing the environmental impact, at the same time sustain our growth in being able to provide commodities for not just developed but developing regions is very inspiring. And I think for Unilever as a company that can think into the future, for the future of our generations, that's what the USLP for me really stands for.
Yeah, so I have one question that I think is pretty exciting, and since we're running a hackathon, so nowadays we keep talking about big data as the future, technology as the future, digital as the future. So what do you think is the future of sustainability? So this is open for all.
I don't know. The possibilities are endless.
I'm going to share an example of digital solution that is done in India. So in India, waste picking has actually become a type of livelihood for people. Waste picking meaning people actually go around collecting waste, compiling it, and then bringing it to be recycled. So in India, one of these problems was that there were many thugs. There were people monopolizing the market. So you imagine all these women and all these waste pickers are going around picking waste. They are being underpaid. They are sort of being abused because they're not paid for the value of their work they do. And instead, all the money is just going to syndicates. So a digital solution that came in is actually called Kabadiwala. It's a tech solution where actually it gives you real-time updates for the market price of the recycled plastics that they collect. It's very fair. It uses big data. It actually aggregates all the amount of waste in India in different cities. So it really benefits the community because we actually see now most of the profits going back to the actual waste pickers and not these syndicates. Another very interesting digital solution was also they actually changed their recycling bins to be able to sense what type of plastic is being collected and when it's actually filled up. So when the recycling machine is actually full, it sends a notification to the nearest waste picker who can go and empty this. So I think this is a very good way of showing how digital has been able to help drive recycling. It's been able to help us get waste off the streets, and it's also able to help social impact in ensuring that people are properly compensated for their work.
Jonathan, would you like to add?
Yeah, I'll just share more on the other end of how we've used digital to kind of power our message. So one of the things that we've worked on as a brand has been how do we get this life-saving message of washing hands, of cleanliness, of staying hygienic. How do we get it to the right people at the right time? So what we've done together, actually working with Google, is we built across some of our key markets, we've built actually data models that actually help us predict when infections will rise. So we actually have models, for example, in India, in Indonesia, that predict when, for example, flu is going to increase, when diarrhea is going to increase, when pneumonia is going to increase. And actually, we are using that models to actually power our advertising so that people are getting those messages at the right time. So I think that's also one way that we get people, these messages out in as relevant a way as possible.
Yeah, so I think we heard a lot about technology. So actually I have a flip question. Has there been any instances where technology has challenged or become a roadblock to driving any of your initiatives? So once again, open for all.
I think it's not technology in itself, but the costs of technology. So of course, then there are many ways then to drive that cost down by opening up the technology, working with industry partners. So I think I think technology will help, but the cost of technology has to go down.
Maybe also one of the infrastructures, like for example, if you're going to developing regions that do not have, say, good network grids, they have like power outages, they have, say, natural disasters like typhoon that shuts electricity for a few days. That's one of the challenges we have to think about. Sometimes as you come up with, like, for example, a phone solution, but if people are in an area where they cannot have access to their phones, then we have to rethink our strategy.
I'd also like to add an example. So when you are working in Unilever, you actually get to meet a lot of people and hear a lot of stories. So there was one story actually I wanted to share how technology was kind of having an adverse effect on what we wanted in society. So this actually came from our very good friend Ellen over there. Hi. So her example was that when she went to South Africa for a trip, she realized that young women were actually more interested about having a social media presence than to actually keep that money for any other purposes like to eat or to buy stationery or food. So they'd actually go to the extent of having to solicitate themselves to actually just pay for data essentially. And that kind of thing is very adverse because they're not very well trained in understanding what is STDs or this kind of issues. So we see a lot of like them spreading HIV and everything, and it's actually a lot worse for society. Excuse me. So that being said, I feel like to some certain extent, understanding the people and understanding the consumers is very important to understand what the cost it can be and how we can actually develop a solution that cannot result in this kind of situation, or at least answer this type of issue that we see globally.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for all the different insights. And I think for the interest of time, maybe we'll wrap up with just one more question. Yeah. Oh. Okay, so this is once again free for all. So I mean, everyone's over here with a lot of ideas for the hackathon. So what excites you the most for this hackathon? What are you expecting from the students? What kind of ideas are you hoping to see?
Okay, I think what's really exciting about this hackathon is also for us in Unilever to hear what do you think about your solutions, because it's always better to hear from the outside. Because sometimes when you work within the organization, you sometimes get restricted because of some knowledge. So like the more you know, the less you know. So you get restricted on a lot of things, a lot of boundaries. So for you, someone from the outside, you can actually give us a new perspective on how things could be done or could be improved. So really exciting to be able to hear those ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, I think very much along the same lines. So I think there's a way. It always helps to have an outsider's perspective on some of the issues that we're struggling with every day. And because we talk about it so much as part of our day-to-day work, sometimes we end up just rehashing kind of old solutions, right? That, or if, for example, there are interesting solutions that people bring up within the business, but someone says, oh, we've been there, we've done that, so that doesn't work for whatever reason. So there's also that level of, we've all worked on it so long, I think that always helps to bring that fresh perspective. And I think for you guys who are like really plugged into digital, like you guys more than even me, you guys are like digital natives, right? So I have to know how and what challenges you guys are facing out there today that, it doesn't even have to be, problems that like I think they were saying, it may or may not be a developing market problem, right? What are challenges that you see out there in society that we are facing here in Singapore? How can you guys, with your kind of awareness and knowledge of digital, use that to kind of address those issues? I think would be really interesting to see. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you guys for coming down here, sharing about, what you do in Unilever, giving us all these insights. So I think...
I also wanted to add, because I saw a couple of questions asking about sources of data, like where should you find the source of data to present your hackathon solution. We actually highly recommend you to look at open source data and then use that to your advantage to justify your solution. So a lot of the 10-slide pitch decks are also about how you can prove what you're saying is actually a problem and then make that important. So that's my hint to you guys. Okay, sorry.
Okay, yeah, so we can't really go through all of the questions. There are quite a few because we have limited time. But we will be here even at the end of the event. You can find us to ask us anything about USLP or ask us about working here in Unilever, etc., whatever's on your mind. So now I think, we're moving on to the ideation exercise. So thank you guys so much for coming down here to share. And yeah.